Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Patchwork Podcast. So, this week I wanted to talk about relationships and dating within Gen Z. And I just want to start by saying when you raise a generation on technology and social media, it is no wonder Gen Z has ended up the way that we have when it comes to relationships and dating. I'm 23. I got married at 22. We dated for 7 months and got engaged right at our 7-month mark. We got married 4 months later. So we had dated all together 11 months. And I don't think that is the common route for Gen Z. So today we're going to be looking at what Gen Z really thinks of dating. I asked a bunch of Gen Zers for real life experience, their thoughts, their advice, whether or not they are meeting people online. And I will share some advice that I have that I think could truly help our generation if we took that approach to dating. So welcome back to the Patchwork Podcast. So I wanted to start by reading through some statistics so we could understand where the baseline is at for our generation. Okay, I wanted to make my latte at the beginning so I could really try to focus. So 20% of Gen Z individuals see career advancement as a priority over marriage. 20% might not sound like a lot when you first read that, but I completely understand this feeling by so many people, especially for females, because we have been taught that you can put marriage and family on hold and your career needs to come first, and you're only going to be young and hot for so long. And this whole girl boss, be independent, go do your own thing mindset. I understand that. I feel like I'm a very driven, motivated person. I care so much about my career. Obviously, Jesus, my husband, and family come first, but I completely understand this priority among so many Gen Zers. Also, when you feel like the economy is in such a bad place and you feel like, oh, to be married, I need to be well off financially. I need to succeed in my career first. I need to be okay and able to do things on my own first. Of course, people are going to be trying to prioritize their career over marriage. And I just want to say now, there's a lot of numbers about to be thrown out, but I think these statistics will help you really be able to visualize where we are at as a generation. Approximately 60% of Gen Z individuals believe marriage is necessary for a successful relationship. That's really encouraging for me to hear. I feel like the Gen Zers I'm seeing online outside of the people in my close groups that I know don't actually seem to value or care about marriage. And if they do value or care about it, it is in a romanticized rom-com way. It seems like they haven't really been able to connect those dots, that marriage involves sacrifice and commitment, the action of love, even when you aren't feeling love towards another person. I feel like that concept has been lost on our generation. So the average age for first marriage for Gen Z is 28 years old. And obviously that's a huge jump. Everybody knows your grandparents probably got married at 18, 19, 20. That's a 10-year jump from the age that our grandparents were getting married at. That's insane. So then here's this generation, we're prioritizing our career, having fun, finances, all of this over having marriage and family. And I think people forget that you can be married and you can be well off financially. You can be married and you can have a certain amount of independence. You can be married and wait to have kids. You can get married and travel the world with your person. I feel like so much of our generation thinks that marriage just ties you down and you never have fun again, when in my experience, it's been the complete opposite. 35% of Gen Z respondents view marriage as an outdated institution. That's interesting. 70% of Gen Z respondents believe that financial stability is a key factor before marriage. And this could obviously explain a large proportion of the problem of why we are not getting married. 70% of Gen Zers believe that financial stability is a key factor before marriage. Look at our economy, and this is where I have a lot of frustrations with Donald Trump, is when one of the large parts of your campaign is affordability and eggs and milk are still incredibly expensive, then you haven't done what we voted for. And when you run on the America First movement, this is where I get really frustrated again. I bought into that movement. I bought into the idea that we were actually putting America first, and clearly we haven't put America first. If we're just taking a look at this administration, they've done a lot of amazing things, but I don't think they have been fully America first in the way that many of us had hoped. So to me, it makes complete sense that 70% of Gen Zers feel that they need to be financially ready, because starter homes, you can barely find one for $400,000. Your money doesn't stretch very far. And I could see that from a male perspective as well, how that could be really scary because you want to be able to provide for a girl, but in this economy, that's a little bit difficult. This statistic is concerning and weird. 50% of Gen Z thinks marriage should be more inclusive and diverse. I don't even know what that means. If 50% of Gen Z thinks that we should be in open marriages or what is even adding diversity to your marriage mean? No, it's a no from me. That's weird. That's weird. 80% of Gen Z individuals believe that love and compatibility matter more than marriage traditions. This is another reason why marriage would be failing in my head. I think anybody that has had a serious friendship, relationship, dating, marriage, you would know that love requires action even when you don't feel like loving the other person. That is so much of what marriage is. It's sacrifice. It's loving the other person even if they frustrate you, even if you feel annoyed or you don't want to or it puts you out. It's loving that person regardless. This shows to me again that Gen Z is a very selfish generation. We idealize a lot of things. I feel like so much of our generation has this idea in our head that love is going to just be like a rom-com movie and you're never going to lose that butterfly feeling that you feel at the beginning of a relationship. And once you lose it, then you're out because maybe you're just not in love anymore. Maybe you don't care about that person the same way that you used to. You value your personal happiness too much. You probably, when you're married, you're not going to feel compatible with that person every single day. You're just not. I feel like our generation has lost the plot on what marriage is supposed to be. Obviously, you want to be compatible with someone you're going to marry. Obviously, you want to love someone you're going to marry. But when I'm looking at marriage traditions, I am looking back to the original concept of what marriage was, which we will get into a little bit, and I don't think we should lose those marital traditions. It doesn't specify in the statistic what they believe they are, so I won't comment any further on that. 30% of Gen Z adults are concerned that marriage may limit personal freedom. Yeah, it does limit your personal freedom a little bit. To me, that's not something concerning. It's just kind of a byproduct of marriage. You do less things alone and you do more things with your spouse. And to me, that's been really comforting. I actually enjoy that so much because I do work from home and that can be very lonely. And you always have somebody that you can go to. You always have a friend at the end of the day that's there for you. You always have someone to go do things with that cares for you, that you enjoy hanging out with. So maybe sure it limits your personal freedom in the way that you always have somebody by your side to do things with, but I would say it's a good thing. Any marriage that is doing things the right way, you are growing together as human beings, you're not growing apart. So again, it might limit your ability to go to the club at 2 a.m. unless you and your spouse are into that and want to both go together. I don't know. I don't really get the concern with that statistic. 70% of Gen Z report that their parents' marital stability influences their views on marriage. This is huge to me because virtually everybody I know around me has divorced parents. Obviously, that's a huge factor, but I come to that with a different perspective because I think for people that grew up with parents in unhappy marriages or divorced parents, that is an opportunity to see everything that you do not want in your own marriage, and it's an opportunity to learn and for you to say, hey, look, that doesn't work out when people treat each other like that, or when people make those decisions in a marriage, it doesn't work out. So here's everything that I'm not going to do. And I think you can actually allow it to influence your views on marriage in a positive way. But I think that most of Gen Z has probably been scared to death after witnessing their parents' marriages because that's just a fact. Most people I know come from parents that were not truly in very happy marriages. I know very few people that had parents with a relationship that I really look up to. 54% of Gen Z feel that marriages should be more flexible and less obligatory. What? Again, I don't really know what this means. Is this like on Monday I want to be married to you and on Tuesday I'm feeling like going to the club and meeting new people and I just need you to be okay with that? I feel like it kind of is that fear of commitment where maybe it's like, sure, we're married, but things can get open if I'm feeling like I'm interested in other people. I kind of feel like that's what this statistic is saying. Again, some of these statistics aren't specific enough. 65% of Gen Z thinks that personal growth and career development are more important than marriage in their 20s. And again, that goes back to us being a very selfish generation. This brings me back to what I wanted to talk about on gender roles. and traditional values, and how that's a very difficult thing to mesh with the current society that we live in. So when we're looking at gender roles, and traditionally the girl's main job is to take care of the house, cook, clean, take care of the children, make home a home. And now you are asking girls to split their time where they have a career. Girls are having children later because they are focusing on their careers. And I can say from experience, it is a very hard thing as a female to continue on with those traditional gender roles when you're also trying to have a career. And I think that's because maybe it wasn't necessarily the way God intended it to be. You're trying to live in a Christian marriage where the husband is the head of the house, but then you've also got two people bringing in an income, when generally it was just the male bringing in the income. So of course he had, that last say. It just makes it more and more difficult to follow those traditional gender roles and what God intended. And then the same thing comes for males. Males are supposed to be the protector of the house. Well, males these days are more and more feminine by the day. Men are supposed to be the provider. Well, then we're going back to two incomes in the house now. That makes a weird power balance. And for marriage in general, I still think the husband should be the head of the household and that he makes the final say, but I'm just saying it introduces in more problems into an already complex situation. I think porn is also a huge problem in our generation with men, which is incredibly sad because not only is porn just rotting their minds, but also it's introducing these ideas into sex that never existed, these really creepy concepts, and the more and more that they watch it, the more disturbing things they add in because they constantly need something to keep you going. Once your mind gets used to seeing regular things, they start introducing really weird stuff. And I think that goes back to transgenderism and another part of why this is such a huge problem. You've got people staring at their screens, watching all kinds of that continuously just introduces in weirder ideas as you go on. Of course, you're going to find all of these people with weird sexual fantasies, and that's just that, and it's really sad. This is a graph about the share of Americans who are married between the ages of 23 and 38 in 2020 by generation. Gen Z is not on this list, but I think you can conclude where Gen Z would be looking at the rate it goes. When the silent generation was between the ages of 23 and 38, 81% of them were married. For boomers, 61%. We've already got a 20% drop. That's crazy. Gen X, 53%. Millennials, 44%. I'm kind of glad it doesn't share the number of Gen Zers. So what I'm seeing from the stats is that Gen Z is worried about economics, long-term commitment because of personal freedom, and they kind of have this question of will love even last from what they've seen and what they've experienced. I'm also getting from these stats that we are a very selfish generation, as I've said. We are putting our careers and our personal wants and desires over committing to another person or to having children. And I think it's because so much of our generation has I want to do what I want to do as our mindsets. And of course, when you look at a generation like we talked about in the last episode that is an incredibly mentally ill, increasingly on SSRIs generation, I personally think that when you're struggling with mental health, it makes you an incredibly selfish person. It makes you not really able to see outside of your own world. Everything is woe is me. Why is this happening to me? And again, it's not intentional. I don't think those people are trying to be selfish or bad people, but I think it's a byproduct of struggling with mental health is you really have a hard time of seeing the world outside of yourself and focusing on anything outside of yourself because you are just fighting to keep yourself alive. And so in a lot of ways, you feel like you have to choose yourself, which in turn makes us increasingly more selfish. So we're a very worried generation. How can we afford to get married or have kids when we can't even afford rent or to buy a house? How can we promise to love someone when we've seen a lot of marriages where they promised the same thing and they failed? We want this rom-com style love that lasts forever, but I feel like our generation does not understand that real, true love comes from commitment to Jesus, conversations, fighting for one another, putting yourself out in order to serve the other person, showing the action of love even when you do not have the feeling of love towards somebody. Real love is sacrifice and compassion and honesty and everything that we saw Jesus do. That is what we are called to do in a biblical marriage. So this is my book, The Meaning of Marriage by Timothy Keller. I'm a very slow reader and I haven't even finished it yet. And I've been reading it for a fat minute because I'll pick up a book and I'll read like 5 pages and then I'll put it down and it's bad. But he has an amazing perspective on marriage, and I wanted to read a couple of excerpts from this book that I thought articulated very well how Gen Z is viewing marriage and relationships and also what God intended for it to be. So this first excerpt, if God invented marriage, then those who enter it should make every effort to understand and submit to his purpose for it. We do this in many other aspects of our lives. Think of buying a car. If you purchase a vehicle, a machine well beyond your own ability to create, you will certainly take up the owner's manual and abide by what the designer says the car needs by way of treatment and maintenance. To ignore it would be to court disaster. So he starts the book by saying, obviously our blueprint for marriage should be the Bible and what the Bible says about marriage, because God is the one who created marriage. So why would you not listen to what he has to say if you want to have a successful marriage? So this is about the belief that everybody is unhappy in their marriages. Typical is a Yahoo forum in which a 24-year-old male announced his decision to never marry. He reported that as he had shared his decision over the past few months to his married friends, everyone laughed and acted jealous, which is weird. They all said to him that he was smart. He concluded that at least 70% of married people must be unhappy in their relationships. A young woman, in a response to his post, agreed with his anecdotal evidence that fit her own assessment of her married friends. Out of 10 married couples, 7 are miserable as hell, she opened, and added, I'm getting married next year because I love my fiance. However, if things change, I won't hesitate to divorce him. If I was that girl's fiance, I would run, because in our house, we don't bring up the word divorce. You're not allowed to even joke about it. And generally, in our house, nothing is off limits for jokes, but divorce is one of those things that you don't even get to bring it up. They taught us that in premarital. They're like, don't even joke about it. And again, for me, divorce is not an option. That's not even in the cards of anything that would ever be chosen. And also, prenups aren't an option for us. I think this is an interesting thing as well, because a lot of people are really big on prenuptial agreements these days. I'm not saying that this is the rule for every relationship. I'm just saying from my perspective, I think a prenuptial agreement is basically a, I love you, but what if this fails? Also, when you get married young, you're not really bringing a lot into the marriage in the first place. You don't really have a ton of money, so you don't have a lot that you really need to protect. If somebody's on their 3rd marriage, honestly, at that point, I don't really know if you should be getting married for the 3rd time. The 3rd time's a charm, though, you never know, but the statistics do say that 3rd marriage is the most likely one to fail. Just as you go on, you are more likely to fail in your marriages as you get remarried. So again, back to that excerpt, I think that's a very selfish perspective. If anything changes and I don't love you anymore, I'm out, but love you for now, so let's promise that we're going to love each other for the rest of our lives right now. That's dumb. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. If you actually care about somebody and love them in the biblical way that we are called to, you're not just going to up and run when you don't love them anymore. When you don't have that butterfly spark feeling anymore, you're still going to fight for that person because it's obvious. The butterflies aren't going to stay forever. And of course, I think you'll have periods of ups and downs where you still feel those. But I think overall, the love becomes so much more than the butterflies. It becomes better than the butterflies. It becomes honest and real, and it's not easy. I always think of the song when I think about true love, Let's Hurt Tonight by One Republic, which might sound dumb. I don't care. To me, when I read the song, this is how I view it. It is talking about a couple that is having a really hard time. And he's basically saying, we are going to lock the doors and we are going to talk and we are going to hurt until we get this figured out, because that's how much we love each other. We're not going to go silent. We're not going to leave. We're not going to go call other people. No, you and me are going to sit in this room until we have it figured out. And I just think that's really beautiful. So I'll read you some of the lyrics, which I would sing, but I actually am in fact tone deaf. Oh, I know that this love is pain, but we can't cut it from out these veins, no. So I'll hit the lights and you'll lock the doors. We ain't leaving this room till we both feel more. Don't walk away. Don't roll your eyes. They say love is pain. Well, darling, let's hurt tonight. I think that's a beautiful way to view love and pain in relationships that you will continuously fight for one another. Nobody's leaving, nobody's getting angry, but you're going to sit and you're going to figure it out. Okay. This part says, marriage used to be a public institution for the common good, and now it is a private arrangement for the satisfaction of the individuals. Marriage used to be about us, but now it's about me, which this again goes back to what we were saying about how Gen Z is a very selfish generation, and I think that's really all that you need to know. We are concerned with how can this marriage benefit me? How can it make me happy? When the entire point of marriage is serving your spouse like Christ served us. When Jesus says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church, he is talking about a sacrificial kind of love where you are there to serve your spouse. So this next part is talking about some recent divorcees. The first is physical attractiveness and sexual chemistry. One of the most obvious themes in Shapiro's interview with recently divorced people was how crucial it was that they had great sex. One woman explained that she'd married her husband because I thought he was hot. Which, let's just pause right there. That's an incredibly dumb reason to marry somebody. Just because you think they're hot. Like, everybody knows that physical attractiveness is obviously going to fade over time. So I'm not really shocked it ended in divorce. But to her distress, he put on weight and stopped caring about his appearance. The honeymoon was over, and the main way she knew was sex. She made it a rule not to have sex unless she really wanted to, but she seldom wanted to. We had settled into a routine where we only had sex once a week or so, maybe even less. There was no variety and no real mental or emotional rewards. There was none of this urgency or tension that makes sex so great, the sense of wanting to impress or entice someone. So in her view, sexual attraction and chemistry were foundational requirements to finding someone compatible. So in my opinion, that's already, you have the complete wrong idea of marriage if it's just about sexual compatibility and chemistry. Obviously, I think that's something that you want in a partner, but that's not by any means something that makes a good marriage. So this is some 2024 studies that were done on divorce rates. So this says lack of commitment is the most common reason given by divorcing couples according to a recent national survey. Here are the reasons given and their percentages. So 73% of marriages ended because of a lack of commitment. In my opinion, if you're going off the biblical requirements to end a marriage, lack of commitment, unless they are cheating, is not a reason to divorce somebody. 56% said they argued too much, and 55% said infidelity was a reason. I think arguing too much is not a reason. I think infidelity is a fair reason to leave. 46% said they married too young. I'm interested about that one because I think in a lot of ways, yes, if you get married way too young, that can be a problem, but I think in a lot of ways you're growing with your spouse, you are developing your lives together rather than growing separately and then coming together and trying to figure out how to mesh your two completely different lives. I think getting married young actually makes your marriage go a lot better and it makes it a lot easier. So when I got married, I'm 22. We've already lived these completely separate lives for 22 years, but we're just both kind of getting fully out of the house and doing things on our own, and we're figuring that out together. Rather than both being in our 30s and getting married, which I'm not saying is a bad thing at all. I'm just saying I personally think it's easier if you have that chance to make that decision and you know it's the right person. I would rather spend the first 8 years of my 20s figuring out marriage together and building a beautiful marriage together than coming together when we're 30 and being like, well, I do things this way. Well, I do things this way and it's not going to work your way. So it's just going to cause more conflict. That's how I feel like it kind of would be the later you get married. You're too set in your own ways at that point. Not to make it work. I just think that it makes it more difficult. So 45% said they had unrealistic expectations. I'm looking at Gen Z for that one. I don't actually know what the age demographic was for this, but I think Gen Z has incredibly unrealistic expectations on what a marriage really should look like. Again, I think most people are viewing it as how can you serve me? How can you honor me? How can you make me happy? It's me, and nothing about the other person. So of course that would make sense, while unrealistic expectations would make the marriage fail. Lack of equality in relationship, 44%. Lack of preparation for marriage, 41%. Domestic violence or abuse, which I think is a fair reason to leave, is 25%. Not only is it a fair reason to leave, I think the second domestic violence starts happening, you got to get out of there. I think it would benefit every person to do premarital counseling before you are married. I also think it wouldn't really make sense to do it with a couple who you don't really admire and want your marriage to look like theirs. We did our premarital with a couple who I would be ecstatic if our marriage wound up looking exactly like theirs. I would be honored if our marriage looked exactly like theirs. So I think something to always keep in mind is when you are seeking advice from somebody, don't seek advice from someone about that specific thing if you wouldn't want your life to look like theirs. So don't seek advice from someone about marriage if you wouldn't want your marriage life to look like theirs. And I think that's a fair statement to make. Okay, the last part I'm going to read from this book reminds me of the whole ick thing with Generation Z, which we have a serious problem with this whole ick thing, and I don't feel that way about the icks. My personal opinion about icks is that when you are truly in love with somebody and care for them, there's not really anything they could do that could give you the ick. Like anything that my husband could do that maybe if someone else did it, it would ick me out or gross me out. When he does it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's really cute and weird. But it doesn't give me an ick. I think when you start getting icked out by somebody, it's you just trying to find ways to leave and excuses to get out of there. I don't think it's that you actually are getting icked by this person, because if you truly love them, you could totally look over whatever it is that's bothering you. In John's classic humor article, Picky, 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 he tries to nobly get us to laugh at the impossible situation our culture has put us in. He recounts many of the reasons his single friends told him they'd given up on their recent relationships. How could I take him seriously after seeing The Road Less Traveled on his bookshelf? If she would just lose 7 pounds. Is 7 pounds really going to make that big of a difference? That's crazy. Sure, he's a partner, but it's not a big firm, and he wears those short black socks. Well, it started out great, beautiful face, great body, nice smile, everything was going fine until she turned around. He paused ominously and shook his head. She had dirty elbows. Are you freaking kidding me? And I fully believe that this is actually reasons that people have for leaving relationships, because I've heard the whole ick thing. I used to do the whole ick thing, and it's just an excuse to be on your own and be alone again, because people are scared of commitment in our generation. They're scared of getting hurt. They don't want to go through another heartache or heartbreak. And the thing is, our generation has to stop being so scared. That's part of falling in love, is that you might get hurt and that it might not work out. When you go on a date with somebody, you have to mentally understand in your head, hey, it might not work out with this person. Hey, we might fall in love and it still might not work out. And that happens. That's part of life. That's part of dating. When there is love, there can also be loss. And that is just the reality of it. I think our generation can sometimes be very scared of facing reality. I wanted to talk about some of the different stories that I heard from people when I asked people to share their dating experience, if they'd use dating apps, any advice that they might have. And I will say, I would assume I have a more right-leaning Christian audience. So this is who you're hearing from when I share these stories. So this person says, older Gen Z here, and I'm not dating. I find the Gen Z dating culture to be toxic. Dating apps specifically have ruined it. You are swiping on looks rather than actually meeting someone in person and seeing them for who they are. Personality, looks, everything. Gen Z is very different from online to in person. Plus, I feel as if Gen Z is very self-centered. They want to grow by themselves even if they're with a partner. I've seen it multiple times through friends, both female and male. Not to mention hookup culture, which is something I completely despise and never will do. Gen Z is okay with the casual hookup and not looking for something serious. To me, that sounds completely accurate to all the statistics and things that we just heard. I think the sexual liberation movement really did a number on our generation. We don't really value sex the same way people used to. People are very quick to just decide if they want to do those things with somebody without actually knowing the person. It's a very transactional thing, and it's really honestly heartbreaking because God intended it to be a wonderful thing. We have distorted what sex was meant to be so far past its original intentions, and that's really sad. Someone said, I feel like Gen Z is an anxious generation and is scared of doing something embarrassing and having it be on film since everyone has their phones. That's another thing. We don't trust people the way that we used to in our generation anymore, because as girls, you're going on a date and you're scared that you're going to get raped or murdered. That's the honest situation. If you are on a dating app and you are meeting up with someone and you are a female, I don't know a single female that has done that and hasn't shared her location with 20 people and then also texted a friend and been like, look, if this goes horribly, I'm going to text you the letter Y and you're going to call me with an emergency so I can get out of here if this person's crazy. Like, that's the thought process that goes into a girl's mind before a date. I think the thought process that goes into a guy's head is she going to Me Too me? Is she going to put a 7-part series on the internet about how cringy I was? Is she going to try to ruin my life? This is the ideas that go into guys and girls' brains before a date. Guys are worried about getting Me Too'd for kissing a girl on the cheek or trying to hold her hand during a date and then the girl saying that she got sexually harassed. Girls are terrified about getting raped and murdered and whatever other weird stuff that we've read on the internet from our true crime podcast. There is no level of trust in our generation anymore for the opposite sex because females have been raised to hate males. Males are only looking to females for sex, and it's just an all-around horrible situation we've put ourselves into as a society. This person said, the problem isn't that Gen Z can't love, it's that we treat courtship like content consumption. We have infinite optionality, but zero structure. This goes back to the online dating thing again, though, because when you're constantly just sifting through people's profile, she's hot, she's ugly, she's hot, she's ugly, and you're only caring to date someone because of their looks, again, you're not going to get very far, but when you're online, you don't really have much else to go off of than 4 photos of someone with their dog or in a bikini. You're kind of just trained to look for hot people because you're not going to get a lot of personality or a lot of information about someone from a dating app. Someone said, not dating, not meeting many people in general, but also lack of men who meet my standards. When we're living in a society with men who have porn at their constant access, who aren't valuing God the way that we used to, yeah, the men aren't going to meet your standards. When we're living in a society where girls only care about their career and themselves, people only care about their online status, if you will, yeah, the girls aren't going to meet your standards either. Someone said they always have a addiction, which turns me off completely. And that again goes back to not putting a phone in your child's hand at such a young age, because what's a curious mind going to do? You're going to start Googling stuff. You don't know what anything means. You're going to start Googling stuff, trying to figure it out. And you might just accidentally stumble upon these things, because if you go on Instagram, TikTok, X, YouTube, wherever you may be, no, you're going to see nude people or girls in bikinis with their butts half out, no matter what you're doing. You can hit don't show me, avoid this, but they constantly feed it to you. It's frustrating. It's frustrating as a consumer that wants to keep their mind clear and not see those things. It's constantly still shoved into your face. I'm not dating because every time I put myself out there, all guys want is sticking to traditional values eliminates most men itself nowadays. And I think a lot of men would say the exact same thing about females, if we're being fair here. I think both sides feel like there is a lack of desire to live with traditional values nowadays. Dating in Gen Z sucks because there's so much deception, especially with being a Christian. I'm assuming this person just means people act like they're Christians and they're not really living their life like that. I'm a 1989 millennial, and I think Gen Z isn't dating because the Gen Z generation has what they want when they want, and they're not stressed, happy for them. I disagree with that. I think we are a very stressed out generation, but I do agree they want what they want when they want it. And they want what makes them happy all the time, and they don't love making hard decisions. Dating was so tough until I met my boyfriend of 2 months after my sister and his brother set us up. Someone else said, how do you even date? And someone else said, it's effed. This was an interesting one because this is from a younger Gen Zer. She said, girl, okay, so for starters, I'm not dating. The guys I've had experience with, guys in church, college, etc., on paper are nice green flag guys, but guys don't ask for my number. They want my Snapchat, but I don't use Snap. It seems like a lot of guys my age don't have goals and motivation in life. And it just seems really hard to find a guy that will approach me first and be the man in the relationship and having values and putting God and my purity first. I'm starting to lose hope. And I think that's really fair. We as females want somebody who will lead us and will make those tough decisions in the relationship and will set the standards and put God first. And I think a lot of guys don't really have that willpower anymore to be able to do that. Someone said, I'm married and we met online. I believe that marriage is more about our holiness than our happiness. And the people saying that marriage is all about happiness are the ones that are set up on a road for divorce. And I think that's a really fair statement to make. It's about serving one another. It's about growing closer to God. It's about trying to be the servant that Jesus was for your spouse. There's a lot of people on here that said that they met online and it worked out really well for them. And there was others who said that online dating wasn't the best. I think if you are trying not to meet people online, I met my husband at a Bible study. I think going to things like Bible studies, trying to meet people in church, asking friends if they have anyone single that they would recommend to set you up on a date with, join a pickleball league. Like join a running club. There's so many different things you can do if you want to meet someone in person. You just actually have to be willing to put yourself out there. And I think most people aren't, which that's sad because our generation doesn't really experience things the way former generations did when they were dating. Now there's the, well, we're talking, well, we're in a situationship, well, we're kind of dating. Okay, now we actually are, but we broke up, but we're back together. But then we broke up again, but now we're back together. People can't commit in our generation. We have lost our minds when it comes to dating. And it's sad. Again, it's sad. And I think that Gen Z has hopes and desires to love someone and find someone who actually cares about them and someone that they can serve and be with. And we have all of these people that want to date and have have a traditional lifestyle and values, but then they're having a hard time finding people that feel the same, that are actually going to live that out with them. And that's really sad to me. One thing he talks a lot about in the book, The Meaning of Marriage, is going back to the original construct of marriage, because even when he was talking about this in the Bible, it was a really crazy thing at the time. You've got all the dudes that are having 47 wives, and for Jesus to come and be like, no, Shadi, you can only have one wife. That was crazy at the time. And now it's still crazy in different ways, where God is saying, you know, you do need to try to follow those traditional values. You do need to serve your spouse. He's saying this to a very selfish world that we are living in. Jesus is saying to serve your spouse like Christ served the church, which, again, that's a radical statement for today's day and age where people are so selfish. I personally don't see anything wrong with online dating, because whatever works for you works. I've seen tons of people end up married from dating people online, but I also just think that you have to be really careful and smart about it. And I think it's more fun to meet somebody organically, and I think most people would agree with that. I would just also think most people think that's incredibly difficult to do these days. But I think girls also need to put themselves out there a little bit, because guys are scared, again, that they're going to get Me Too'd or that the girl's a psychopath, because girls are psycho these days. A lot of them are. They are. I went through a psycho phase when I was a liberal, and it's because it gets just kind of ingrained into your head. I just feel like girls, sometimes you have to put yourself out there a little bit, show the guy that you're interested, because he's probably scared that you're not interested and that you're going to go crazy and want nothing to do with him. I really do think that that's how a lot of guys feel these days, and so they don't pursue girls as much. But girls, we still want to be pursued, but sometimes you just got to give them the green light that it's, you can come to speak to me, because they're scared. I think they are scared. Okay, lastly, before I wrap up everything, I just wanted to react to some videos of certain people sharing their experiences on dating in Gen Z.
Millennial and like Gen Z men, like men in our age groups, they're twice as likely as women to say that they're not dating, they're not having sex, they're not even trying to, because they feel like nobody would want to. Which is like crazy that they're so self-aware to know that. But like, no. But like in all seriousness, like I think there's a real challenge with young men, and I think it's like it might not even be about them. Like it might not even be about the woman in their life. It's like the same thing where I'm sure you've had experiences like yourself as well. If you're feeling so shit about yourself, then how are you supposed to like give love to other people? Or when you're thinking like, oh, well, why bother investing and like even buying somebody something nice for a first date because it always goes shit. And I was really shocked when I read that, because I was like, maybe there's something like deeper happening. I don't know.
Look, you can't treat future partners based off past experience. That's not fair to the future people. And like we've all had bad relationships. We've all been, sewered in the past. We've all had bad things happen to us in relationships and in love. You cannot carry that forward. I think that's part of the breakup, where when you break up after a shitty breakup or a shitty relationship, you need to heal. Because if you bring that trauma forward, you're not doing anybody like anything good. I've done it. I've done that in the past, where I've brought in previous relationships into current ones, and I've hurt people. And it's like, I'm not saying these people I hurt were fucking innocent by any means, but did they deserve what I did to them? Absolutely not. And I did it to them just because I was carrying previous pain forward.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, after a breakup, take time to.
Okay, I think they made some interesting comments. I don't really think that was fair of her to make that dig towards guys, where go them for being so self-aware that nobody wants them. Again, this is actually a really sad thing for men in our generation. This is why so many men are so lonely and addicted to porn, is because they feel this literal hate for men coming from women. They can feel that, and that goes back to why they don't want to pursue. But I do think they brought up a good point about trying to heal before you skip into another relationship. Because for people that do fear this loneliness, for people that constantly skip from relationship to relationship and do not take the proper time to heal, I don't really know how you can be happy in those new relationships when you've like not even given yourself the time to get over that first one.
I have come to a genius conclusion, and it is why Gen Z has an awful time with dating nowadays. Do you have a failed situationship, relationship, talking phase, anything? I'm sure the answer is yes. I've had too many to count. But after my last failed relationship, I was really thinking deeply about this topic. I wholeheartedly believe that it is because Gen Z is broke. I know that sounds absolutely crazy, but we're the generation, right? We dealt with COVID, ruined our work ethic. I personally was a junior in high school when COVID started, and it ruined my work ethic so much, and it took me so much to get that back. Like, you're sitting at home, doing school from home, you can look everything up online, classes become so much easier, you don't have to put in effort to go to school, you don't have to wake up early, dress up, all of it. It becomes a cakewalk. And then our generation gets into college, ChatGPT comes out, classes are easy, you can take online classes if you want, and it has genuinely just become such a work from home, lazy environment. It's upsetting too, because our parents weren't like this. I know you're gonna come for me and say that I sound crazy because I probably do, and I know I sound like my parents, but it's true.
You know, she brings up a good point too, thing where it's like, no, it really was the dang phones. Like, this caused so many problems that no other generation has ever had to deal with. But I think that's why it can feel really frustrating to our generation when we are so heavily critiqued by older people about how we're lazy and we have no work ethic and we don't try and we don't care. Well, you shoved these phones in our faces and now we have all these problems because work's from home, school's from home, dating's from home, we're not leaving, we're not interacting with other human beings, and you wonder why we're so screwed up. Well, look at the environment that's been created for us, which we do have to take accountability as a generation. We have to get out of this. We can't let this happen to ourselves. So we have to stop complaining, though, and being down in the dumps about it and just saying, you know what, this is the cards we've been dealt. Let's figure it out. Let's not be lazy. Let's not use ChatGPT for everything. Let's actually learn. Let's do the hard work ourselves. Let's get ready even when we are staying at home. Let's invite people over. Let's go out. We have to take accountability for those things because, yes, we did not create the system, but we are responsible for fixing it, especially for the next generation.
Our parents worked multiple jobs. They went to school, got ready, had to study in the library, not use the internet. Oh my gosh, why do I sound so old? And then we're sitting here complaining about the fact that we have one 8 a.m. class throughout our whole day. We don't have a job, and that's all we have to do. Anyways, moral of this story is that the way Gen Z has been raised is lazy.
Okay, I'm going to cut her off there because she's going on for a while, but I do agree with her that laziness and different things can impact our desire to even date because we don't even want to put in the effort or the time.
Okay, world. My son is helping me and my wife understand how dating works now. Back in the day when me and Melissa were dating, I liked you. I said, would you be my girlfriend? She said, yes. She was boyfriend, girlfriend. Now there's
You can court, Kev.
you can court. Now there's 5. Give them the stages, Isaiah.
So, from my understanding, and I think this applies for a lot of people my age, it goes talking stage, situationship, dating, and then boyfriend and girlfriend. Now, sometimes dating and boyfriend and girlfriend can be together, but I'm seeing more and more that dating and boyfriend and girlfriend are a separate stage.
But explain the situation.
Yes,
Okay.
because I thought situationship was toxic. Oh,
So-
we in a situationship.
Here it is.
I'm going to say I haven't listened to this full video, and I'm going to say before he does what I think a situationship is. I think that's a fear of commitment. Maybe you've been together before and you're not sure if it's going to work out again, so you're like kind of exclusive. You don't want each other to date other people, but you also don't want to put a label on it because you failed too many times or there's certain other aspects at play. That's kind of how I view a situationship.
Talking stage is when you guys know you like each other, but you haven't really made any romantic moves yet. But it's clear that you guys like each other, okay?
I have a slightly different view on it. I think there's a lot of different ways people get themselves into these situationships.
Situationship is that, but you've probably gotten physically intimate. You've probably kissed. You probably went on like 1 or 2 dates.
Okay.
Dating is when you are going on dates, like, I guess for a few weeks by that point, where you are going on dates.
Are you
okay?
exclusive?
Love Island. That's my next question.
Technically, you're exclusive, but I guess you're also technically not exclusive. And then boyfriend and girlfriend is when you're actually official. Everybody's scared of commitment nowadays. That's why there's 4 stages of
That's
this.
why.
But that's what I've gathered.
A bunch of gray and a bunch of headache and a bunch of heartbreak.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. A bunch of heartaches, a bunch of headaches.
Are y'all afraid of commitment? So the less
Yes.
you put into it, then it. Oh, we was just talking. We was just situation.
Everybody kind of just wants to just have the
Friends with benefits.
Yeah, basically, just have a girlfriend or boyfriend in private.
You have?
I don't even know what that phrase means actually, so I don't know.
Okay, so I think that's really interesting that he brings up the point that a lot of people kind of just want someone to have for their sexual desires, but not actual true companionship or relationships, which I also think there's an opposite side to that, where there's certain Gen Zers that want a companion but don't really feel they have any of those sexual desires because so much of what they've experienced online with porn or whatever it may be, or they have really weird, scary sexual desires from what they've experienced with porn. Online things. So this just kind of goes back to we're scared of this commitment, and I think it's just a fear of getting hurt and having to go through the pain of losing somebody that you care about. That's kind of the way that I see it, but maybe other people are viewing this as we just don't even care about having those relationships. We just want the sex. And that kind of goes back to the immediate gratification of things. So overall, I think the things that we could do that, this is really random, but I just thought about it. When I say that, I say that instead. I say it like it's THET instead of THAT. I don't know why, but I understand that I have that weird verbal tick. So if you're listening and it's really annoying, I hear it when I say it, but I don't say it properly ever. But anyways, I think when we are looking at our generation as a whole and how we could fix this whole dating crisis that we have, one is coming to the understanding as a generation that you do not have to be financially well off to get married. You can actually build your financial wealth together. You don't have to have crazy weddings. You can elope. You can spend very little on your wedding and still really enjoy the day. You don't even have to have a wedding to be married, even though it's, in my opinion, it's such a beautiful, wonderful thing to get to experience, and it is worth a lot of money because it's one of the best days of your life, and I truly believe that. If we would put a lot more effort into how can we serve and please other people before we think about pleasing and bringing joy to ourselves, I think that you actually start to become so much more happier. Anytime I'm like really in a grind of being really good about reading my Bible and like trying to be a really good wife and like serve others and all this stuff, I start to feel happier in turn. When I'm serving others, when I'm in my word and I'm doing what God has directed me to do with my life, that's when I really start to feel the happiest, is when you are putting yourself last and others first. You feel this whole new kind of joy. It's really like a beautiful transformation, and I think a lot of people experience that when they are living godly marriages, because like you start to see the Holy Spirit transform you. Coming to an understanding about what God intended marriage and sex to be. If we as a generation stop putting such a heavy focus on people's looks and our own sexual desires, we might actually become a lot happier, because real beauty, this sounds so stupid and gay, but whatever. Real beauty actually does come from within, because at the end of the day, you're going to get old. Beauty fades, but your heart can always be beautiful. And I don't care how dumb that sounds, because it's true. And if you have a good heart and a good personality, and people can see that over your looks. And I think as girls, we are much more likely to be, if someone has a really good personality, to us, that makes us more attracted to them. Like the better your personality is, the more attractive you become to a female. Maybe it's not the same for guys, can't really speak for that, but I do think from a female perspective, it's more about personality and humor and intellect and things like that than looks, even though that obviously plays into it. I think if we get out of this whole idea that we have to focus only on ourselves and our careers and our goals and our ambitions, and we start to realize that there's so much more to life than just your career. At the end of the day, you're replaceable in your career. You just are, and that's a fact. So do you really want to look back on your life and think about how you put every aspect of your career and didn't put family first ever? And so now you don't have a family, or you don't have kids when you're old, and you don't have those people to come to take care of you and to look after you because you chose a career over love and a family. And I think that's sad that we've been wired to think that way, that We have been severely lied to about what our goals and priorities should be as a generation, and I think that is why we are struggling so much when it comes to dating and relationships, and that makes me really sad. Because in my opinion, we are the loneliest generation, and we are a very sad generation. And I think that when you find somebody that feels like your other half, when you find somebody that promises that they will always be there for you, they will be your friend, they will care for you when you need them, it is such a beautiful thing, and it elevates your relationship. He talks about this in the book as well, though, but the reason that marriage is such a beautiful commitment is because you are promising to love that person in sickness and in health, for rich or for poor. It is a whole new level of your ride or die. And it's just such a beautiful thing. I think the reason that marriage has been looked down upon so heavily is because a lot of us didn't really witness the best examples of marriages. And that's where, again, it's our opportunity. We didn't make the system, but we do have a chance to fix it. We can turn all of these things that have been really hard for our generation into something really beautiful. This whole, like, you have to get married young, you have to have kids thing. Well, I mean, I will say, while I think it's been a really positive thing for me in my life getting married young, I think you need to be careful about who you marry. You need to be smart about the decisions you make, because I've also witnessed in churches where they really push that a lot. A lot of people get married, but they're not even ready for it. But they're just like, well, this is what I should do. I should get married quick and fast and young. And no, I don't. You're making the biggest commitment of your life. You do need to think about that and be careful about the decision you made. But also, when you know, you know. Okay, this is the Alps order. My husband's about to freak out when I give him this haul when he comes home. Chilled mint, 3 milligram. All right, I'm just going to show all of these at once. These were a bunch of different packages of the Alp. And just a reminder that you can use code Maggie for 10% off because they're awesome. Also, I just want to say, as somebody that as a graphic designer who loves package design, I think they have the cutest packages that there is out there, and I'm obsessed with them. But the part that I'm really excited about is the clothing haul. So we've got the hat that says "A Better Time." Freaking love it. A hoodie. The hoodie is definitely my favorite because it's brown, and I love hoodies. They've got all the kinds of detail and stuff on the arms. They've got the nicotine warning on the side. And then this is the back. A beanie. I feel like I'm fully prepared to take on the Tennessee weather right now. Okay, the rest are shirts, which are difficult to put on with the top I have on right now, so I'm just going to show all of them. I love these because they kind of have all the comfort colors for everything, which is my favorite. The back, this is awesome. I love the graphics on these. Seriously, as a graphic designer, all of these I could not love more. So thank you to Alps for everything they've sent. This is awesome. My husband's asking me every single day where the Alp package is at, so he's going to be very excited about this when he gets home. And don't forget that you can use code Maggie for 10% off because they're truly an awesome company that will stand behind you and back you no matter what, and I really appreciate that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that this episode gave you a little bit more insight to what Generation Z is struggling with. Feel free to leave in the comments below any of your experiences with dating and relationships in Gen Z where you maybe agree or disagree with me. I would love to hear what everybody thinks. So thank you guys so much for watching.